Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales show. I'm your host, Mark Bangs, and I'm actually really excited about today's guest. So, my guest today, really good background, right? So, he's worked as a chief marketing officer. He's had roles such as a growth hacker, growth consultant, and he's currently the co-founder. I'll say currently, been doing this a couple of years now. Co-founder of a really interesting business. I'm going to let him explain it himself. But yeah, welcome, Alfie Lambert. How you doing, Alfie?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, very good. The sun is shining, unusually for here in Scotland. But no, I'm good. I'm good.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, to kick things off, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, you've given me a great intro already. I've been in and around tech for a while now. So I actually retrained. I went back to university when I was 24. I'd been working in sales previously. And then when I came out, while I was in uni, I kind of fell into startups. So I met a guy there who was in crypto, and we had a company that installed the first ever Bitcoin ATMs in the UK. And I kind of started doing his marketing, and then I started doing it for a music festival when I was there. And then when I came out, I sort of got into the whole world of growth, and I had the growth hacker role, and just kind of naturally fed from there. It was actually my first role when I left uni was where I met Ardil, my co-founder. And that's kind of, he built LIX then. It was a kind of bit of a side project, and we've worked on it over the years. And then about a year and a half ago, we decided to sort of go all in full time on it.
So you've come quite heavily from a sort of data science, AI sort of background, which obviously informs what you're doing now, I guess. So
Yeah,
what's LIX? Tell us about that.
so LIX provides ways to help you get B2B data from primarily LinkedIn and a few other places, and perform insights on that, extract the data, and do what you need to do with it. So we work with lots of different types of customers: salespeople, recruiters, business intelligence and market intelligence people. Looking for firmographic data. LinkedIn's actually an incredible store of B2B data. It's much more up to date than people's websites or even sort of Crunchbases, because it's actually the users updating it themselves. That's kind of where we saw the opportunity there for data, because obviously it's there's the onus is on the user to update their profile and say where they're working and what they're doing, and it's feeding all these millions of data points every single day. So LIX helps you do that, and we provide kind of machine learning on top of the extracted data to help you find email addresses, or work out what industry someone's working in or what level they are within the company. So yeah, we are a data extraction company, but much more moving into being more of a kind of AI and machine learning company. Like you said, coming from a data science and AI background, that was kind of always the goal for us.
Yeah, I love it. I love this sort of. I mean, I don't come from a data background, but more and more, I'm seeing the relevance of it, the application of it. I don't want to dig too deep because you'll expose me for nothing about data science. But I know from previous conversations with you, you mentioned about the machine learning side of things, extracting email addresses. That's really interesting as well, right? Because there's a GDPR implication, like in a positive way for LIX, right? In terms of how you're either sourcing or getting that information. It's kind of
Yeah,
outside
so
the scope of this chat, but I'm just curious
no,
about
no,
it.
no. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of companies who do what we do, and some of them, depending on where they're based, they might sort of buy email addresses in from databases, which is something that obviously we can't do because we're based in the EU, and GDPR law prevents that. That's classed as personal data, even if it's buying and selling and trading email addresses is something that you can't really do. So what LIX does is it looks at the publicly available data on LinkedIn, and it kind of guesses an email address based on what the email format of that company is, or different industries have different types of email addresses as standard. So in tech, you tend to get first names a lot more, rather than legacy industries that are a bit older tend to be first name dot surname. It does all of that in kind of milliseconds, and then it tests. We've got a number of different tests that we run through to see if that's valid, and then it spits it out at the end. So it'll run through a list of people on LinkedIn, and it will look first name, last name, business, work out what email address it might be, test it, and then validate it, and spit that out for you. And then that way, it's a kind of totally legal within GDPR way of finding an email address, because it's all just based on public data. And cold emailing is perfectly legal under GDPR as well, as long as you have a kind of a good reason for it, as long as it's a product they would benefit from, and you don't store their data too long. And there are a few kind of provisos, and we do walk our customers through that. But yeah, I mean, GDPR was obviously a big bombshell, and I think we're probably the only company in Europe that are doing what we do at the moment. I think most are either US or China based, and maybe a few in the Middle East. So yeah, it's a boon for us to be able to provide a GDPR safe way of doing that for customers.
Oh man, where were you guys a few years ago? When I was still manually building lists in a sales job, and manually trying to figure out, the naming conventions on email addresses, then going to like mail tester to try and validate it and stuff. I wish I could have. Yeah.
The funny thing is LIX did exist, but people didn't really know about these type of tools. So it's actually an interesting story. So a lot of startups, come from some guys sitting in a room and saying, this is my idea, this is what I want to build. It didn't really work like that for us. So Ardil, my co-founder, he lived next door to a guy who worked for Adobe. And he said, he knew that Ardil was a great developer. And he said, can you help me get this data from LinkedIn? And Ardil built this tool in a weekend. And then the next week he came to work with me on the Monday where I was a growth hack. And he said, I built this thing that's kind of cool. And I feel like people might like it. Maybe we should sort of market it on the side. And it was good for us because at the time, the company we were at had a kind of very clear vision. And we kind of wanted to do our own stuff and test new things out. And that's kind of the way that growth works, right? Doing lots of different experiments. So it was something that I could kind of play around with and try all these new growth ideas I had. And Ardil could, really let loose with his development stuff and come up with new features and ideas. And it was more of a sort of side project for a long time. And then when lockdown happened, LinkedIn usage exploded. Daily average users went up by almost double overnight and kept growing. And like a couple of 100 million more users signed up. And he got to the end of where he was working, and my business had kind of taken a bit of a downturn due to lockdown because I was working with fitness industries at the time and a lot of gyms had closed. So we were like, look, let's just go all in on this. And that's kind of where we are now.
It's a nice story. I mean, perhaps you can build a bit on that actually, because I'm curious about your journey because you've changed your model, haven't you? Your business model. So you're adopting a product-led growth PLG model now. Could you talk us through that? Like, how did you start? What sparked that to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So previously we had one tier, one plan, one price, no trial, no way of testing LIX out, before you tried. And obviously we've seen a shift. Primarily it started with kind of B2C, apps on your phone, because there were so many things out there, so many apps to try, and kind of development had been a bit democratized. It was so easy for people to build apps and tools that we kind of naturally moved into an era where you would get to try things out before you buy them. Most apps on your phone, you download it and you get a free trial at least for a little while before you have to pay for it. And B2B started to shift because people always treat B2B and B2C as separate, but actually you're always still selling to a customer. It's still a person at the other end, right? And if they're used to working in this way with technology, it will gradually bleed into business. And that's what happened. In fact, we read a Forrester report that said 75% of people in B2B want to try things out before they pay for them, right? So we were starting to move away from this kind of what is now a slightly even outdated model of doing a demo and then trying to sell a big enterprise package to a whole company based on a couple of demos and some follow-up calls, which, saying it out loud now, seems kind of crazy, right? To think that companies would do this and someone would spend all of that money on something that their staff and their team have never even tried. So yeah, we kind of saw things moving in that direction, and it was obviously a big shift for us because we had to change everything, but it made such a huge difference. It's been great for us. There were a few kind of culture shifts and different ways of thinking. So I took on all the customer service myself at that point because I wanted to be closer to the product and how customers were using the product. So I now answer the live chat all hours of the day. I do all the customer service emails because if there is a problem, or even if there's just a way that people are interacting with it that we didn't expect, then it's good for me to know, because obviously now we have to lead with product. It can't be led with sales. It can't be marketed. It can't be the brand. The product has to be at its top level, because that is where all, the whole sales process begins, by someone trying it out and hopefully sort of loving it and adopting it and taking it to the rest of their company.
So, so if anyone fancies a chat, they can find you on the on the live chat at all hours, right?
Yeah, the little purple icon on LIX in the corner. But it's true, and I do I do love talking to customers as well. I mean, I said to you when we spoke recently, sometimes I'll end up chatting to a customer about their sales process, and that's really not my job. I'm there to help them if LIX has got a problem, but they're like, oh, I'm having problems with my cold emails. But yeah, it's a great way to, people always talk about, apparently Jeff Bezos used to do this at Amazon, right? You do 1 day a year of customer service. Right. And kind of being on the front line of that has made such a huge difference, because you obviously also, if you build something, it's the same thing even with like sales processes. Because you're so used to doing it every day, it becomes kind of commonplace to you. You don't think about other ways of approaching it, how other people are going to use it. Yeah. When we start doing user tests and you realize that nobody uses your product in the way that you do, or the way that you thought they would, and then you kind of have to adapt and move around that. And it sounds, it's silly, but there are so many products out there that they don't do that. They don't kind of dog food it. They don't try their own product or watch other people using it. So yeah, and it's been a great thing for LIX because it's helped us make the product so much better, because obviously, like I said, you have to lead with that.
So two questions there. One's really quick. Just for, I don't want to make any assumptions about our audience and what they may or may not know. We should have done this at the start, but
Okay.
how would you define product-led growth? Maybe in just 1 or 2 sentences.
Sure. So product-led growth, I mean, really, the clue's in the name, right? It's about, it's really about building a product that, well, they say build a product that sells itself, but actually I want to talk about this later because there is still some sales involved, and there always will be. But it's essentially, like I said, instead of going through, in software, B2B especially, instead of going through that process of, providing a demo and, sales follow-ups and all that kind of thing, it's about building something and letting people try it out first and letting the product speak for itself and kind of buying people in by them using and testing the product. So again, this is, like I said, it's something that we've been doing in kind of B2C for years. We're used to doing that with apps and things we sign up for, and you get a month free of Spotify or whatever it might be. It's just that for business to business, essentially. Yeah. And it's a slightly different way of approaching as well, because instead of, maybe in the old days, you might want to approach a CEO to try and sell a software package or the head of a department. Actually, for me, it's better for me to actually to speak to the worker that's going to use it every day. It's better for me to get into the salesperson who's going to try this and let them, test it out and love it and maybe share it around their office. And then they go to their boss and they go, hey, we've all been trying this and this is great. And the team's already bought in. So it's kind of more of a bottom-up approach to sales as well in that way.
Yeah, I love it. And I suppose the thing is, because it's product, it's all about the product, as you've said. It's not sales-led, not marketing-led. So you have to get the product right. And very quickly, I'm guessing you're getting feedback and you're learning what do people like, what do they not like. What have been like the top kind of things you've learned, or top maybe pivots you've had to make along the way, whether to your overall business approach or the product itself?
I think definitely moving away from making assumptions about what people know, because like we just did this on the call, right? We launched in talking about product-led growth, and we didn't stop to see if anyone in the audience knew what that was, and it's something that we're so used to doing all the time. You're so used to, I'm used to interacting with apps like this, but maybe there's a certain section of like my users who aren't used to doing things like this. I didn't realize that LIX is primarily through a browser extension. It wasn't until I spoke to people that, especially some of my older users, were a bit nervous about installing a browser extension. They were worried about what this was going to do. So there's all of these little considerations that I'd never really processed before, because to me it's just so natural to do this stuff. And another big one for us as well was making our roadmap public. So on the LIX, on your dashboard, you can click on the roadmap and you can suggest a feature, or you can vote on some of the suggested features. So we get real-time feedback from our users of exactly what they want us to build next, what direction they want LIX to go in. And I think that's been really, really useful for us, because I think sometimes it's so easy to go, this is what I want to build. This is what I think is going to be cool. And actually my users are saying, look, well, we really want this functionality that you don't have at the moment. And so, yeah, it's been really just having to listening to users, getting their feedback, seeing how they interact with things. And it always surprises you.
So, sales, outbound, right? So one of the things you've said to me before is about how there's this conception widely that outbound sales doesn't really have, or has a diminished or smaller role in the PLG model, but you don't necessarily agree with that. You think that outbound definitely plays a part in it. What do you think, or should play a part?
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion about this. I mean, there's seen some posts on LinkedIn that obviously maybe they're sort of hamming things up for engagement a little bit, but talking about sales being dead in B2B software sales because the product sells itself. And actually I really don't think that's true at all. So like I said, part of me doing this customer service stuff with my customers is I'm also selling to them at the same time, right? I'm upselling them. I'm talking about the best package for them, and also doing part of that salesperson's job that people always forget about, which is kind of guiding people to making the right decision. And outbound stuff still absolutely, it's what they call a product qualified lead. I look through the data and I see where I've got maybe a power user, maybe someone's used up all of their seats and they're at the max of the amount of exports that they can do, and I should reach out to that company and say, look, hey, maybe you need a few extra seats, or maybe we need an enterprise package for you. And there's still obviously going to be this process, and even further back than that, also just getting the product out to those people. I mean, obviously the product has to sell itself, but like you said, a few years ago, you were doing this stuff manually and you didn't know it was out there. If I'd have ended up in your inbox with a cold email and said, hey, Mark, try this out, and then I leave you to it, maybe that I don't say, look, can we book in a call, or any of that other sort of stuff that you're used to doing in outbound. Maybe I just say, hey, Mark, I've got this really cool thing. It might be useful for you. Give it a try. And then while you're trying it out, obviously you come through that process of maybe chatting to me on the live chat, and I can continue the sales journey that way. And it's a slightly different way of doing things, obviously, as before, but I still absolutely think outbound has a place.
Do you think that that requires a mindset shift on the part of the salespeople that are in that kind of model or environment, though? Because it doesn't come naturally just to say, like, to email or call someone and say, hey, here's a freemium version, or here's a free trial on something, and then just let them run with it. Because that almost falls into the remit of marketing, surely, doesn't it?
It does. But then I think with marketing, there's always there's the idea that they will kind of follow the rest of the process on their own, whereas you can always still follow up. And like I said, if you're sending that email out and I know I'm getting you to come on, then I'm still having to sell to you when you talk to me in the live chat or via emails or all these other things. You know, I offer a face-to-face call with any customer that signs up. I mean, a big thing that we talk about at LIX is things that don't scale. While we are still small enough for me to be, as a co-founder, you know, face-to-face talking to all of our customers, and I do that as much as possible. So it's not really as hands-off as it might seem. It just doesn't feel like a normal sales process. But yeah, I do think there's a mindset shift for that. And I do think in larger companies where they adopt this, I think there needs to be a mindset shift from sales managers, because you have to think about a new way of maybe setting targets for people. Because, you know, X number of meetings isn't a good way to gauge sales, you know, when you're working in a PLG company. I'm not sure exactly what the answer to that is. Maybe I'll figure it out and write a book on it. But yeah, I think there definitely needs to be a whole shift. But, you know, I've heard of some of your podcasts before, Mark, that, you know, sales is kind of moving in a new direction, and that kind of era of, you know, the follow-ups and the kind of the idea of the pushy salesperson is kind of going now. And we are moving towards this person who kind of guides you through a sales process rather than pushes you to make a decision early on.
Yeah, and then that's where you need the alignment of sales, marketing, some sort of customer success function, the ops, the dev. It all needs to, everybody needs a seat at the table, right? There needs to be that communication cross-functionally to enable that, or to allow that to even happen. So yeah, no, really.
And maybe it's that one person does all of those things all the way through. Like, maybe instead of breaking this up into chunks, maybe you have one person who is the customer success and the sales, but like in the way that I'm doing at the moment, I'm seeing the benefit of that. You know, maybe siloing these people into different groups isn't the way to do this. And actually, maybe you still have your dedicated marketing team who are doing your, you know, your content and your SEO and your PPC and all that other sort of stuff is being handled by them. But maybe any contact with a customer from beginning to end, because again, also they appreciate that familiarity of having the same person that they speak to every time instead of being kind of passed around. And I think that's probably, you know, if we did take anybody on to do this stuff as we grow, that's probably the way that I would approach it, is have one person still managing somebody all the way through the process.
Yeah. And that, you know, that kind of is another nail in the coffin of the predictable revenue model of splitting, even not just siloing departments, but splitting up that sales function, SDR, AE, you know, and you've got multiple handovers, and it creates a bit of friction, unnecessary, unproductive friction in the buying process and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, if you've got people that are basically full cycle, but more focused on this, like the sort of customer success onboarding and then eventually growing those accounts versus just, I've got to get a meeting. Yes, surely in the long, for the business, for the customer, for the user, it's got to be better for everyone. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, I've worked in sales before, and I know that you do always get that friction also within that of, you know, has the SDR booked a good enough meeting for the AE, and there's kind of arguments back and forth, and, you know, whether you're just trying to fill a quote or you're pushing the right people through, and or, you know, he promised me this deal and now you're saying it's this, and you know, just having that one person to manage it all the way through kind of gets rid of so much friction and so much kind of confusion as well. So yeah, I think that might be the way that we're headed. I mean, you know, in practice, I don't know how possible it is as you get larger and larger, but certainly for startups and SMEs, while you can manage that flow, then I totally think that's the way to go. And I think customers appreciate that as well. You know, it's nice for them to start any message to me with "Hi, Alfie," instead of like whoever it might be on a customer service team. They know exactly who they're speaking to every time. I'm the guy they've spoke to all the way through the process. So I think that's a nice thing to do. And I think obviously, again, part of this PLG thing is part of the product is not just the product, it's the customer service as well. And it's the person that they speak to, and it's the feeling that they get about interacting with that company. So I think if you can nail that, I think that really adds to the, you know, the product of in product-led growth.
Yeah. And I mean, this is part of why I love the tech side of sales, marketing, and so on, because, you know, to scale some of the stuff we're talking about here, you are quite reliant on, like, even down to the example you're giving of live chats. You need some intelligent routing on the back end, right? So that, I don't know if it's done by IP or whatever. So you know, you've got, and tell me if you've got a better way of doing this, but, you know, say you know, you've got all these different users, all these different accounts. Someone comes onto the live chat. You need some way of smartly routing that to the relevant, whether you call them a salesperson or whatever, but the relevant person who's already managing that account, because then again, it continues that seamless customer experience. Are there any kind of considerations like that I don't know if you're at that stage yet, but you know, looking for you guys 6, 12, 2, 3 years down the line, so sorry, 6, 12 months or 2, 3 years down the line, how are you kind of planning for that sort of stuff?
I mean, like I said, we're not there yet, and it's primarily me that takes this on. But I think probably it depends on how we split it. You know, whether I had somebody in a different location to take on the different office hours, because the majority of my audience and the majority of my users are in the US. So I'll find myself doing live chat at like 11 o'clock at night because that's the time that they're working, and you know, they're free to talk about this stuff. So it may be that I would get someone to do a different time zone, and we kind of split it up by whoever picks it up first. But we do. I mean, the great thing about a lot of the software that we use is everything kind of talks to itself, so it talks to each other. So we use Intercom, and Intercom, you know, it talks to our Stripe and it talks to LIX, and I know exactly what someone's user ID is. I know what plan, as soon as they pop up in the chat, I know what plan they're on. I know what the last page they looked at on LIX was, so I can kind of work out where they are and what their problem is before they've even started talking to me, because I can see what they're doing. So there will be ways of splitting this up, but luckily we're not. That's not my headache for now. That's my headache for further down the line.
It'd be a good headache to have that. I have no doubt.
Oh, yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's a good problem to have. So many customers, I need more people to look after them. That's what we're working
on. So Alfie, is there anything else that you're working on at the moment, or that you wanted to bring up today? I love this. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day, but is there any other?
Yeah, so the next stage of LIX is really, we want to start looking into doing more with the machine learning and the AI stuff. So it's more about applying insights to the data, because getting the data itself is something that's really useful, but it's not particularly exciting. You know, and there are other people out there that can do it. They're, you know, maybe not as easy or as quick as us, but there are plenty of ways to, you know, to get this data out there, and it's performing insights on that data and the ML stuff that we find really exciting. And we've got a super good team for this. So our third co-founder, Ben, is an incredible AI and data science guy. We've got a few other people that we work with who are really good at this stuff. So maybe generative AI is the next step for us. So if anyone is interested in this stuff, the chat GPT that just came out recently, that everyone's a buzz about this, and it's a kind of AI that you can ask questions to, and it will think about and give you a really smart answer. And it's worth playing around with. It's loads of fun. And the kind of, I'm sure people have seen the kind of generative AI, like copywriter things. It'll write a blog for you, or a sales email, or whatever it happens to be. You know, there's a lot of amazing things with AI right now. If you feed it some data, it will give you way more back than you gave it, and it kind of, you know, cuts down on time. So we do a lot of work with business intelligence companies. So we're kind of looking at moving in that direction, and, you know, helping you get the data, but then applying, you know, AI to give you insights based on that data, so that you're not having to, you know, hire a business analyst or whatever it might happen to be. So yeah, maybe when we do that, I'll come back on and talk about that. But we're still in the early stages.
Yeah, please do. And you know, you mentioned BI companies there. So, who's a great fit for you right now? Who would you love to have a conversation with, whether it's specific or just generally like an industry? Or,
I mean, in terms of, like I said, because of the PLG thing, it's a slightly different way of working. So we do some sort of project work with bigger consulting firms. So, you know, it'd be great to, you know, talk to some more of them, you know, your Deloittes and your KPMGs and stuff, because obviously they need the data, and they need they perform the insights on it for customers. So, you know, those people are great for us. But actually, in terms of the PLG stuff, it's just about any company that's got a good concentration of people that could use LIX. You know, any big sales team. Recruitment companies, maybe not so much, because they have their own, you know, ways of extracting data and what they need from it. But yeah, but the business intelligence stuff is mainly sort of big consulting firms, and they're the ones providing that. But again, if we could find an AI, if we can create a generative AI, then maybe you don't need to speak to KPMG or Deloitte to get your business analysis. Maybe you just do it through LIX, and it kind of democratizes access to business intelligence. Yeah. You know, and SMEs because we can all benefit from it. Anyone who runs a business could, you know, do better insights with the way the business runs, or the state of the industry, or the competitors and stuff. But it's actually it's kind of locked behind a kind of quite high pay grade at the moment. So we can provide that, then actually we would make that accessible to so many more companies, which I think would be really exciting.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you can feed in data around, you know, say you've got a sample of deals you've won, deals you've lost, and there's going to be all the data points within that. I'm guessing. I mean, in my mind, this is just some magical black box, but I guess you can see the potential there of the insights that can spit out, right?
Yeah, I mean, all it's really doing is it's doing the same thing that you would have, you know, a business intelligence person or an analyst performing the maths, looking at that data, combing through graphs, looking at all the data points. And then it's not only just kind of summarizing that data, but then it's where the AI is really exciting is it's kind of the intuitive intelligence where it looks at it and finds an insight from it. And it goes, okay, this happened here and that happened there. And this maybe means this, or you had a dip here and actually, you know, looking at GPT, for example, looks at everything on the internet. So it goes, I know during that time, this happened in the news, which may have affected this with you, or, you know, whatever it might happen to be, you know, it's finding all of these data points from all these places at a, you know, faster rate than a human can and going, right, okay, here's the answer to, here's 3 insights that we can pull from your data. And there are some companies doing this kind of stuff already. So if you use Google Analytics, for example, they have a kind of insights feature they look at your previous data and they go, oh, hey, you had a dip here and it maybe means this. And, you know, you had a better bounce rate on this day than this day. And it's just kind of evolution of that, really.
That's amazing. And, you know, I speak to quite a lot of sort of smaller SMEs here in the UK. And you've probably seen this yourself, but there's such a gap in terms of people's awareness of what's possible with tech just broadly. So I like what you're saying about democratizing some of this stuff. And I think as it comes more and more into the mainstream, people are going to just realize, I mean, people, you know, business owners, sales leaders, marketing, they need to realize the potential for some of this stuff. And so I like your kind of ethos surrounding the whole thing. It's really good. So, yeah, thanks, Alfie. I really enjoyed this. Where can people find you?
Okay, so you can find us on lix-it.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Anyone out there listening who's interested in any of this stuff, then I'm happy to talk about this till the cows come home. So add me on LinkedIn and chat to me on there. But yeah, lix-it.com. If you are in sales or recruitment or you need data for any reason, then give it a try. We give you 50 free emails and 1,000 rows of data every single month. So you can sign up and you can try it. That will keep rolling every single month. Try it out. Talk to me on the live chat if you want to learn more. Like I said, I'm on there all the time. So, and I'm always happy to talk about this stuff.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm gonna put the link in the Sales Fellowship community as well. So you know you might get a couple of extra users there, hopefully. Because like I say, I love it. I'm gonna stop saying that, but I
appreciate it. Also, like I'd be happy to if you've got that community there, I'd be happy to join in and answer questions for anybody in there as well. If there's people in there who wanted to chat about it.
And we can have a chat about that. Yeah. So links will be in the description or wherever you're watching this. But LIX, that's LIX-it.com, LIX-it.com. So go check it out. Thanks, Alfie. Really good chat. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.